Hey guys, Senor Tremblay here. I wanted to go over the preterite. So today we're going to go over the preterite. We're going to go over not the uses, but just the conjugations. How are we going to conjugate this and be able to use it for our day-to-day interactions? Okay. So this is my first time trying to put things on the screen here so that it's like easier for you guys to see. So I'm gonna try to like point out things on the screen. So if I look weird, then you know why I'm doing it. So there should be some stuff over here later so I can help guide you along the way of how to conjugate the preterite. Okay, so let's begin. We're gonna start out with regular verbs. So when we're conjugating in the preterite, we have to conjugate the normal way. We're dropping our ending, and then we're adding our new endings for the preterite. Okay? So for our endings in the preterite, we have two different types. For regular verbs, they're going to be AR verbs over here. It's going to be pronounced A, aste, O, amos, astes, aron. Remember the yo form and the LA usted form both have an accent. Okay? Then over here, we're going to have ER and IR verbs that are going to be iste, yo, imos, istes, ieron. You're going to have your accent over the yo form and the LA usted form as well. So those are regular verbs. Our regular verbs are things like mandar or gritar, correr, aprender, vivir, and ocurrir. There's a bunch more, but those are some that you might be familiar with. Okay. So let's conjugate one of these verbs. So I'm going to give you, let's say, correr. So conjugate that one, and then we'll do vivir as well. Okay. So all you're doing with those verbs, all you're doing with regular verbs, is you're dropping the ending, adding your ending for the preterite. That's it. So then we have our endings for, or our irregular verbs. So there's different types of irregular verbs. I categorize them in two different stages or steps. The first one are just irregulars without really any pattern. And then there's irregulars that are key irregulars that have not necessarily a pattern in the verb itself, but they follow irregular endings and there's keys. And I'll show you the keys a little bit later. Okay, so the four irregulars that just don't follow a pattern, there's no real reason for them to be irregular, are going to be dar, ver, ser, and ear. Okay, so your conjugations of dar and maybe I can move this over here a little bit, it'll be easier to see me. So your conjugations of dar and ver are going to be similar for the endings. Okay, so dar and ver are going to be conjugated as di, diste, dio, dimos, distes, dieron, and then ver has the same endings, just with the V in front. Vi, viste, vio, vimos, vistes, vieron. If you see both of these, or saw both of these, then you realize that there's no accents. Okay? And that is why they're irregular, right? Dar is irregular because it has like ER, IR endings, right? And that's abnormal, but it also doesn't have accents either, which makes it irregular. And then ver is irregular just because it doesn't have accents. It has its normal endings. Iste, io, imos, istes, ieron. Muy bien, muy bien. Pues seguimos, chicos. La próxima. So those are your irregulars, the four that are just out of place, that are weird. So I did forget to mention the other two. So they're ser and ear. The thing about ser and ear is that they have the same conjugations. Why? I don't know. But here they are. So ser and ear have the same conjugations of fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuistes, fuera. Like dar and ver, they both don't have accents as well. But we have what's called a spell change. So a spell change is when you have a car, a gar, or a zar at the end of your verb. So when you have a car, gar, zar at the end of your verb, then we have a spell change. We have to have a spell change only in the yo form when we're conjugating in the preterite because of phonetics, the way that it sounds. So, for instance, sakar, it's a car verb, so the C changes to QU. And then you put the ending on, that the normal ending, it's not an irregular, it's just a spell change. So you put the ending on and it becomes sake. S-A-Q-U-E, accent over the E. But then the rest of the verb is normal. Sake, sacaste, sacó, sacamos, sacastes, sacaron. Muy bien. So that's not the only spell change, right? We have car, gar, and zar. They all have spell changes only in the yo form. So it goes C to QU, G to GU, car, gar, zar, and Z to C. So an example of your gar verbs are car, gar. So then car, gar is going to be car, gay. C-A-R-G-U-E, accent over the E in the yo form, and then normal in the rest. Cargué, cargaste, cargó, cargamos, cargastes, cargaron. Muy bien, muy bien. So that's gar verbs, and then zar verbs. So almor zar would be one of them, where your yo form, Z to C, right? Almor say, almor zaste. So the yo form was almor say, A-L-M-O-R-C-E, accent over the E. Almorzaste, almorzo, with that Z again, in the two in the LAO stead form, as well as the rest. Accent over the O in the LAO stead form, right? Almorzamos, almorzastes, almorzaron. Okay? So in those types of verbs, you're only going to conjugate irregular in the O form. Now, you might have realized, like, okay, well, in the preterite, are there no stem changes? Because I didn't stem change for almorzar, which is typically an O to UE in the present indicative. So I guess it's a good and bad thing. There's another rule, but it's easier than the present indicative. So for the preterite, for instance, you're not going to stem change AR verbs or ER verbs. So that's good. But you are going to stem change IR verbs that stem change in the present. So if they stem change in the present and you already remember that, you already know that, then they're also going to stem change in the preterite. There's a little bit of a change. So it only goes O to U and E to I. Or E, a normal E to IE is only E to I. So in the present, there's O to UE, E to I, and E to IE. In the preterite, there's only O to U and E to I. That's it. And it happens in the skateboard. So by the skateboard or the preterite pancake, whatever you want to call it, like trying to figure out where I'm going to put these, in the preterite pancake, right? It's only the bottom two that have the stem change. It's not the boot anymore that we used to have in the present indicative. Okay, it's the pancake, meaning it's only going to stem change in the LA usted form and the ellos, ellas, ustedes form. ¿Vale? Muy bien. So IR verbs, that's the only one. So two verbs that come to my mind right away are going to be pedir and dormir. Okay? Pedir is typically an E to I stem change. Dormir is typically an O to UE stem change. And what was I going to say about that? Oh, it's typically an O to UE stem change. Bueno. So let's conjugate them now. So for pedir, okay, you have pedí, pediste, pidio, P-I-D-I-O, pedimos, P-E-D-I-M-O-S, pedís, pidieron, P-I-D-I-E-R-O-N. Okay? So in that, if I place it over here, only stem changed in the preterite pancake. Okay? Or the skateboard, whatever you want to call it. So then on dormir, on this side, hopefully it'll be here, we're going to have dormi, dormiste, durmio, D-U-R-M-I-O, accent over the O, accent over the I and the yo form as well. Dormi, right? Dormimos, dormistes, durmieron, right? So D-U-R-M-I-E-R-O-N. Muy bien. So those are going to be your stem changers, all right? Muy bien, perfect. So those are some changes. We got those covered, and then we have irregulars with the pattern. So the irregulars with the pattern are probably the most difficult part of the preterite. It's where people get really confused and they don't remember these very well, because you just have to have a memory to be able to do some of these, or practice enough to be able to get that working knowledge. With these, the way that I have my students memorize them is I go, there's a U key type, a J key type, and an I key type. Okay? U key, I key, J key. That's the way that I remember it, okay? So basically what it does is with these in the pattern, there's a U change in the stem of the verb, or an I change in the stem of the verb, or a J change stem of the verb as well. Okay? So for instance, for a U key, you have the verb andar. The stem of the verb andar is A-N-D, but it changes. You need a key to be able to unlock the conjugation. So a verb like andar, the new key stem for that verb is anduv. So that's why it's considered a U key, A-N-D-U-V, okay? And now we have to take it a second step because these irregulars have their own endings, okay? The endings for these irregulars are a combination of AR endings and ER endings. So the yo form is going to be A and E without the accent. And then it's iste, I-S-T-E, no accent, O, no accent, imos, istes, ieron. So, as you might have noticed, the yo form and the L form are going to be the AR endings without the accents. And then all the rest are the ER-IR endings. You'll also notice here that there are no accents whatsoever in this at all. Okay? So no accents for U key, I key, and J keys. So we took andar. Now we got our new key stem, anduv. We just put those endings on and we can do it. So over here should be anduve, anduve, anduviste, anduvo, anduvimos, anduvistes, anduvieron. No accents. Okay? That's why they're called key stems. So our next key stem, or our next key, I guess, U key, I key, J key, we'll do I keys. Aser is the perfect example. We use it pretty often, right? So aser, the normal stem would be as, H-A-C. Now, we change that to H-I-C. The new key stem is H-I-C. Now, once you have that key, you unlock the conjugation because you have your old endings. Your old endings are A, iste, O, imos, istes, ieron, no accents. Ise, hiciste, hizo, hicimos, hicistes, hicieron. The weird thing about aser is that in the third person singular, it also has a C to Z change. It just does. Yeah, like great Spanish, making it more complicated for us, I know. And then one more key, right? It's their J keys. So the J key is another one. You just have to remember the new key stems, right? So an example of a verb that's a J key is traer, okay? So traer, the original stem would be T-R-A, and that becomes traj, T-R-A-J, because it's a key stem, it's a J key, so you need to add a J. So it's T-R-A-J, and then you add the endings. So it would be traje, trajiste, trajo, trajimos, trajistes, trajeron. Weird thing about J keys. The weird thing about J keys is that in the third person plural, right here, should be right there, the J replaces the I in the third person plural. So, bam. That's like the generalized expression or the way that we're going to go about conjugating the preterite. Hopefully, this covered things well with you, and I incorporated enough material where you can see these in action, and you could have done some on your own that you get it. Okay? Well, hopefully in class we'll go over this. Good job. Muy bien, chicos. Nos vemos.